Hey guys, Trill here, and today we're going to figure out how to make sci-fi effects with little to no money. Check out my short film The Spaceman if you haven't already, because we're pretty much about to ruin all the effects in it. To start, here are some practical effect tips. There's so many different styles of sci-fi you can do, like retro or steampunk, so it's important to figure out this before you start, just so everything has a similar style to them. I find it best to create a mood board so you have an overall style you can keep going back to when you're working on the movie. When building sci-fi stuff with little money, the first thing you're going to want to do is collect pieces of old junk that you no longer use. To create the interior spaceship for my video, we used old boxes, speakers, spray paint caps, and soda cans. All this was then covered with cheap black spray paint, which we spent about $15 on. Slapping some printed off warning labels also don't hurt to sell the effect. For the space panel, we just used an old NES that no longer worked, black lighting gel, and glued some buttons we took off of a jumbo-sized universal remote. The space helmet was made using a plastic globe, black duct tape, a concrete forming tube, a small pair of string lights, and some tubing. The suit itself was an old pilot jacket we found for pretty cheap at a garage sale, with some old Boy Scout pins attached to it to add some ranking. A lot of these materials were random things we had around the house, but you could purchase all of them for a little over $50. The last tip I have is to make sure you do plenty of video tests with what you create. It doesn't matter if it looks good in person, and most times it won't. What matters is if it looks good under lighting and on your camera. This may make you have to go back and make adjustments, but that's a lot better than panicking when you're actually shooting. Now moving on to VFX, you should be able to do what I did no matter what editing system you work on. As long as you have the ability to mask out objects, you should be good to go. You want to make sure you have all your effects planned out the best you can before you shoot. If you shoot your video and then jump into editing with no plan ahead of time, you'll find yourself very angry when things don't work out at all. I started playing the VFX about 3 months before we started shooting, and they didn't stop evolving until the video came out. Using darkness to your advantage is pretty vital when it comes to VFX. A lot of big budget films will sometimes put scenes at night because it helps hide visual effects that aren't so strong. Since this is no budget, using darkness will save you from having to put in extra detail and allow the viewer to build the rest with their imagination. This works especially well for space shots, since space itself is pretty dark. To pull out the floating shots, I shot on a black backdrop and had my actors balance themselves on a table that was also covered in a black sheet. From here, I would just have to cut out the extra space, color it, and place it wherever I needed. My next tip would be to do effects that match your camera. I knew beforehand that I'd be shooting the movie with a shallow depth of field, making parts out of focus, so certain effects would also need to be thrown out of focus in order to sell them. This not only makes them feel more like they're a part of the scene, but again can also hide effects that might not look so good. Lastly, you need to scour the internet for free VFX assets to use. Unless you have the time to completely build your elements from scratch, finding and using free assets will save you a lot of time. I'll provide a list below of free planet packs and other sci-fi VFX, as well as some tutorials that go more in depth into building practical effects. Just be sure to research their usage rights and make sure you credit them correctly. That's all for today, guys. Let us know if this helped you out and if you'd like to see more like this. Be sure to also share and subscribe. Now I want you to enjoy a montage of some of the effects I did and the breakdowns of how they came to be. Enjoy!